I've been watching you drag that bag around for nearly an hour. You're not going inside till I see what's under that plastic.
Okay.
Set the box down.
This is my home, that's my door, and I'm done talking.
Right now you're giving me probable cause. Looks like you're moving a kilo of product.
Then
The jury finds for the plaintiff. On the claim of unlawful detention and violation of civil rights, the court enters judgment accordingly. Damages are awarded in the amount of $3,200,000, $3.2 million. So ordered. Counsel will confer on the judgment language.
The taped cardboard box bit into Marcus Reed's palms as he stood in the stale, fluorescent-lit hallway outside apartment 3 billion, shifting the load against his hip so he could fish for his keys. The carpet was worn thin from years of footsteps, and the air smelled faintly of bleach and old takeout. Marcus's hoodie clung to his back, damp with sweat, because the elevator in Oak Ridge Apartments had been out of service again, right on the one night he decided to haul everything up himself. For nearly an hour he'd been running the same route, from the dark gray sedan at the curb through the lobby, and up the stairs with another heavy package wrapped in black plastic and tape. Not mysterious cargo, just the last of the equipment he'd ordered for a small home gym. But each trip felt like dragging the building with him. His forearms trembled, his fingers were numb from gripping slick plastic, and his breathing came in controlled pulls that he refused to let turn into a gasp. He finally got the key between his fingertips. Metal, cold, real, one more second and he'd be inside, door locked, water in hand, silence. He angled the key toward the deadbolt, and the light in the hallway changed. A shadow slid over his shoes from the left, long and deliberate, like someone had been standing there long enough to time the moment. Marcus didn't turn right away. He didn't need to. He could hear the rhythm of heavy breathing, close, too close, the kind that said the person behind it hadn't climbed the stairs by accident. A hand slapped the door beside Marcus's head, hard enough to make the wood thud, and the sound jumped down the hallway. The move boxed him in, wall at his back, door at his shoulder, a stranger crowding the narrow space between. Marcus turned his head slowly. A white uniformed officer filled the frame of the hallway like he owned it. Mid-30s, broad shoulders, flushed face, eyes sharpened into suspicion before he'd even spoken a word. His nameplate read KLINE. His right hand hovered near his belt, not resting, not relaxed, ready. And pinned to the center of his chest, a black body camera blinked a tiny red light that promised the whole thing was already on record. Officer Klein leaned in just enough to be intimidating, voice low and rough like a warning disguised as a question. "You've been dragging that trash up here a long time," he said. "Don't move until I see what's under the plastic. Put the box down." Marcus kept his expression flat. Calm wasn't weakness. Calm was control. He looked at the officer's blocking stance, then at his own door, then back at the camera's blinking light, because the camera was the only neutral witness in the hallway. "This is my property," Marcus said evenly. "That's my door. And I'm going in." Klein's mouth tightened as if the word might had offended him. He glanced at the black-wrapped package like it had personally threatened his badge. "I've got probable cause," Klein snapped louder now for the mic. "Looks like you're moving a kilo of product." Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He just met the officer's stare, steady as a locked sightline. "Then do it," Marcus said. "Make your move." Klein's nostrils flared like he'd been waiting for that exact sentence, waiting for anything he could twist into defiance. The hallway went tighter, smaller, the way spaces do when someone decides they're in charge and expects the world to shrink around them. "Hands where I can see them," Klein ordered, stepping closer. Close enough that Marcus could smell cheap coffee on his breath and the faint chemical bite of cologne. "Don't touch that lock again." Marcus kept one hand under the box, the other open at chest level, visible, controlled. His heart was working hard, but his face didn't show it. Years of training had taught him a simple rule. In moments like this, emotion is fuel for the other guy. He wasn't going to donate any. "Officer," Marcus said, voice steady, "I don't consent to any search. I'm entering my home." Klein's jaw clenched. He tilted his head slightly toward the bodycam as if it were a jury he was trying to win over. "Subject is being evasive," he announced, loud enough to carry down the corridor, "refusing lawful commands." It was a clean, rehearsed sentence, the kind officers used when they wanted the record to sound better than reality. Marcus heard it and clocked it immediately. Narrative building, that's what this was, not safety, not procedure. A story being manufactured in real time. Marcus shifted the box down slowly, careful and deliberate, setting it on the carpet so it didn't thump. He reached toward the key again, slow enough that any honest person would see there was no threat. Klein snapped. He grabbed Marcus's shoulder and spun him away from the door, shoving him back into the wall with enough force to knock the breath out of him. The box tipped and hit the floor with a dull crash. The black-wrapped package slid, scraping against the carpet. "Stop resisting," Klein barked instantly, the magic phrase. The lie that turned aggression into compliance enforcement. "I'm not resisting," Marcus said through a tight exhale, trying to keep his voice level even as pain shot through his shoulder. "I'm not." Klein yanked Marcus's right arm behind his back, then the left. Metal cuffs bit down with a hard, final click that echoed in the hallway like a door slamming shut. Marcus didn't fight. Not because he couldn't, because he understood the risk calculus. A single reflexive pull could become assault on an officer in the report. A single raised voice could become threatening behavior. He'd seen how fast a story could be written when the pen was already in someone else's hand. Down the hall, a door cracked open, then another. A couple of faces peeked out, cautious and silent, like people watching a storm through a window. Nobody said anything, nobody intervened. The building held its breath. Klein leaned in close to Marcus's ear, voice hot and mean. "Thought you were slick," he hissed. "Now you're done." Marcus stared forward, cheek near the rough paint of the hallway wall, wrists burning where the cuffs dug in. He turned his head slightly, just enough to see the bodycam light still blinking red. Still recording. Still collecting every word, every shove, every made-up justification. Klein stepped back and pointed at the black-wrapped packages like they were trophies waiting to be claimed. "I'm searching those," he said loudly again for the camera. "Probable cause narcotics. You're detained." Marcus took a breath, slow and controlled, then spoke in the same calm tone he'd used from the start. "You don't have probable cause and you're not entering my home." That sentence, flat, legal, unafraid, hit Klein harder than yelling would have. It wasn't submission, it was certainty. And Klein hated certainty. He reached past Marcus and shoved the apartment door open without hesitation, pushing it wide like a statement, "I can do what I want." The chain wasn't on. The lock gave, the door swung inward. For a split second, the hallway light spilled into Marcus's living room, clean hardwood floors, a neat couch, a small table near the wall. Normal, quiet. Exactly what you'd expect inside someone's home. Klein grabbed Marcus by the arm and dragged him across the threshold anyway. The cuffs scraped Marcus's wrists as he stumbled forward, forced inside. The officer shoved him down onto the couch, pressing a hand briefly into his chest to keep him seated. "Stay right there," Klein warned. "Don't move." Marcus sat, shoulders squared despite the pain. He watched Klein pivot back toward the doorway, eyes locked on the packages as if opening them would redeem everything he'd just done. Klein bent down, hauled the first black-wrapped box inside with a grunt, and dropped it onto the hardwood with a heavy thud. Then another and another, each one landing like a countdown. He pulled a pocket knife from his gear and sliced into the plastic with frantic energy. The wrap peeled back, tape snapped. Packing foam spilled out in white chunks, scattering across the floor like snowfall. Klein dug both hands into the box, hunting for his fantasy. Bricks, powder, cash, anything that would make the violence look justified. His fingers closed around cold metal. He lifted it out. A heavy dumbbell, matte black, legit, clean. Klein froze just for a heartbeat, staring at it like it had insulted him. Then he dropped it with a clank and ripped into the next package even faster, as if aggression could rewrite physics. Marcus watched silently, the room now littered with foam and plastic, his own property being torn apart because one man couldn't handle the idea of being wrong. And in that moment, Marcus made a decision, not with anger, not with fear, with focus. Because the officer's biggest mistake wasn't the shove or the cuffs. It was that blinking red light on his chest, recording everything, while Marcus stayed calm enough to let the truth speak for itself. Klein ripped into the second package like speed could change what it was. Plastic snapped, tape squealed, and more packing foam spilled onto the hardwood. No powder, no cash, no weapons. Just a folded weight bench frame, a bag of bolts, and a steel pull-up bar still sealed in plastic. Clean, brand new, the kind of thing you order online with a receipt. Klein's eyes darted as his brain tried to rescue the story he'd already spoken out loud for the camera. He flipped the parts over like contraband might be taped underneath steel tubing, then shoved them aside and attacked the third package even faster. Rubber floor mats, resistance bands, a leather lifting belt. The room went dead quiet. Marcus sat on his own couch with his hands cuffed behind him, shoulders squared despite the pain in his wrists. He didn't smirk, he didn't argue. He just watched Klein stand there surrounded by harmless gym equipment and shredded wrap, staring like reality had personally humiliated him. Klein snapped his head toward Marcus, searching for a new angle. "All right," he said, voice sharp, trying to regain control. "Where's your ID?" "In my wallet," Marcus replied evenly. "Prove you live here now." Marcus didn't move, couldn't, not with his hands behind him. "Back right pocket." "Pull it out, the address matches this unit." Klein yanked the wallet free like he was punishing it. He flipped it open, expecting anything that would justify what he'd done. "Driver's license, Marcus Reed. Address. Oak Ridge Apartments, Unit 3 billion. Perfect match." Klein's jaw tightened, but his eyes slid to the other flap, exactly where Marcus had told him to look. And the second he saw it, the last bit of heat in his face drained away. A gold badge, bright, unmistakable, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Under it, a photo ID, Marcus's face official and sharp, title line Supervisory Special Agent. Klein's hands started to shake. The wallet trembled in his grip like it weighed 100 pounds. He stared at the badge, then at Marcus, then back at the badge, like blinking might make it disappear. Marcus finally spoke again, voice low and ice calm. "Is your camera on?" Klein didn't answer with words. He just nodded stiffly, eyes flicking to the red blink on his chest. "Good," Marcus said. "Then you recorded yourself forcing entry into my home." Klein's mouth opened like he wanted to argue probable cause, officer safety, anything, but the words had nowhere to land. He'd already built the narrative, and now the narrative had a badge sitting in the middle of it. "Take these off," Marcus said. "Right now." Klein fumbled for his cuff keys. His fingers were slick with sweat. The keys slipped once, clattering to the floor. He grabbed them, tried the wrong key, swore under his breath, then finally found the right one. Click, then another click. The cuffs opened. Marcus rolled his wrists forward slowly, flexing his hands as blood rushed back into his fingers. Red marks ringed his skin, already swelling. He stood up without a sudden move, not giving Klein a single excuse to rewrite what happened. Marcus walked to the side table, picked up his phone, where Klein had tossed it earlier, and unlocked it with one controlled swipe. He didn't call the precinct. He called someone who didn't negotiate with local ego. The screen flashed. "Field Supervisor, Newark." Marcus lifted the phone to his ear, eyes locked on Klein the entire time. "Yeah," he said quietly as the line connected. "I need you to listen. Uniformed officer inside my apartment, detained me. Cuffed me, forced entry, it's on his body cam." He paused, listening, then added the sentence that made Klein look like he might be sick. "I want his supervisor here. And I want that camera secured as evidence before anything goes missing." Marcus ended the call and looked past Klein toward the open doorway, like he could already hear the next set of footsteps coming fast up the stairs. Because once federal wheels started turning, they didn't stop politely. The apartment felt smaller with the door still wide open and packing foam scattered like evidence. Marcus didn't bother cleaning, not yet. This wasn't a mess problem, it was an incident, and the priority was preserving the record before anyone tried to reframe it. Officer Klein hovered near the doorway, eyes darting from Marcus to the hallway as if an exit plan might materialize. His earlier swagger was gone. In its place was that brittle, defensive posture of a man realizing his choices just triggered an escalation he couldn't contain. "Look, we can talk about this," Klein tried, voice quieter, suddenly polite. Marcus didn't engage the negotiation. He moved with controlled purpose, stepping to the threshold and looking down the corridor. Two neighbors had their doors cracked open again, just slivers of faces and cautious eyes. They'd heard the shove, the cuffs, the shouting, now they were watching the fallout. Klein cleared his throat and gestured weakly at the gym gear. "I had to make sure those packages, you made up probable cause," Marcus cut in, not loud, just clean. "You forced entry, you detained me without a lawful basis, and you did it while narrating it for your camera." Klein's hand drifted toward his chest, instinctively touching the bodycam like it was a grenade. The red light was still blinking, still working, still telling the truth. From somewhere below, a door slammed. Then footsteps, fast, heavy, climbing, not the slow pace of residents. This was urgency, the sound of people who already knew the headline before they hit the landing. 14 minutes after Marcus's call, the hallway filled. First came a sergeant in a rumpled uniform, eyes wide, followed by a lieutenant who looked like he'd aged 5 years on the stairs. Behind them, two men in plain clothes with clipped movements and that unmistakable federal "we're not here to chat" energy. Klein straightened like a child caught mid-lie. "Sergeant, the sergeant didn't let him finish. "Save it," he snapped, scanning Marcus, the torn packages, the foam on the floor, the open door. "Who owns this unit?" "I do," Marcus said. "Marcus Reed, FBI." The lieutenant's face tightened. He glanced at Klein's chest and then back to Marcus like he was calculating blast radius. "Agent Reed, we're going to sort this out." Marcus nodded once. "Good. Step 1, secure his bodycam right now. Chain of custody starts today." The plainclothes federal agent moved first, calm and surgical. "Officer, do not touch that camera," he said, voice flat. "Hands away." Klein froze, palms half raised. For the first time all night, he looked genuinely afraid, not of Marcus, but of accountability. The sergeant reached in, unclipped the bodycam with careful hands, and placed it into an evidence bag pulled from his jacket like he'd been issued one specifically for disasters. He sealed it, wrote the time, and signed across the tape. "Corporate-level risk mitigation in real time." The lieutenant exhaled hard. "Okay," he said, trying to regain control of a situation that had already left his department's jurisdiction. "Let's de-escalate, we'll get everyone downstairs." Statements. Marcus didn't move. "No, we stay right here until my counsel says otherwise, and I want Klein's badge number, supervisor name, and duty roster for this shift." Tonight, Klein's mouth opened again, then closed. He finally understood this wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a documented failure with a federal paper trail. And out in the hallway, the neighbors watched the scene flip completely, because the officer who tried to dominate the doorway was now standing silent while everyone else moved around him like he was already a liability being processed. The lieutenant tried to keep his voice smooth, like this was just another misunderstanding that could be managed with the right wording and the right paperwork. But the room wasn't buying it. Not with torn plastic on the floor, not with Marcus's wrist still marked, and definitely not with a sealed evidence bag now sitting on the coffee table like a live wire. Klein stood rigid near the doorway, eyes fixed on anything except Marcus. The sergeant motioned him into the hall. Outside now, no debate, no ego, just damage control. As soon as Klein stepped out, the temperature dropped. Everyone moved faster. The plainclothes agent, calm, clipped all business, looked at Marcus. "You want EMS? I want documentation," Marcus replied. "Photos, a medical note, time-stamped." "Clean chain," the lieutenant swallowed and nodded too quickly. "We can arrange," not can, Marcus corrected, still flat. "Will, tonight." Downstairs, more voices joined the building. A supervisor on the phone, someone from internal affairs, someone asking for Klein's activity log. It was the sound of a system realizing it had crossed into federal risk. Marcus walked them through the sequence like a report. The surveillance, the hallway confrontation, the false probable cause statement, the cuffs, the entry, the search. He didn't embellish. He didn't rant. He just laid out facts because facts were scalable. The sergeant returned with a small notepad trying to look helpful. "Officer Klein says he believed—" "Stop," Marcus said. "I'm not here for belief, I'm here for lawful basis." He had none. A neighbor finally stepped into the hall, a woman in a robe, voice shaking but determined. "I heard him yelling, resisting, but the man wasn't doing anything. He was just trying to open his door." The lieutenant's eyes flicked toward her like she just added a second camera angle. Another door opened. A man in a baseball cap nodded. "Same, officer was the one getting physical." Witnesses. Statements, independent validation. The story Klein tried to narrate for his bodycam was collapsing from every side. Klein reappeared at the far end of the hallway with two supervisors flanking him like handlers. His belt looked heavier now. His shoulders were tight. He wouldn't meet Marcus's eyes. The plainclothes agent stepped forward. "Officer, you are being directed not to discuss this incident with anyone outside counsel and your chain of command. Do you understand?" Klein nodded once. "Barely." Then, like the universe decided to make the lesson unavoidable, the chief's voice echoed from the stairwell, angry, controlled, and moving fast. Not a calm arrival, a crisis arrival. Marcus didn't smile, he didn't celebrate. He just watched the building's leadership walk into the mess and realized the same thing he already knew. This wasn't going away with a report rewrite. This was going to become a case. And cases have timelines, paper trails, and price tags. The chief came up the stairs like someone who'd just been told his department was on fire. He was in plain clothes, tie loose, face tight with controlled panic. Two more command staff followed, whispering into phones, already running PR triage in their heads. He stopped in Marcus's doorway and took in the scene in one scan. Torn black wrap, foam across the hardwood, gym plates on the floor, and the evidence bag sitting on the coffee table like a sealed indictment. "Agent Reed," the chief said, forcing calm. "I'm Chief Harmon. I want to apologize." Marcus didn't let the apology land as a solution. "Apologies don't fix process failure," he said. "I want preservation orders in writing. I want Klein's dispatch logs, bodycam assignment record, and all radio traffic for tonight. No gaps." Harmon's jaw flexed. He nodded too quickly again. "We'll cooperate fully." The plainclothes federal agent stepped in, voice neutral but absolute. "Chief, you will, starting now, that camera stays sealed. No local review, no pre-screen. Chain of custody goes through us." Harmon glanced at Klein in the hallway. Klein looked smaller than his uniform. The supervisors beside him kept him boxed in like he was a liability that might try to sprint. "Officer Klein," Harmon called, tone sharp, "step forward." Klein approached with stiff legs, eyes down. Harmon held out his hand. "Badge, firearm." Klein hesitated for half a second, then complied. The metal clink of the badge hitting the chief's palm was louder than it should have been. The gun came next, carefully, like everyone suddenly remembered what a real safety issue looks like. "Effective immediately," Harmon said, voice carrying into the hall. "You are relieved of duty pending investigation. You will not enter any report beyond basic incident notification. You will not contact witnesses. Do you understand?" "Yes, Chief," Klein muttered. Harmon turned back to Marcus, trying to regain leadership optics. "Agent Reed will get you medical attention and we're past courtesy," Marcus replied. "This is civil rights exposure, and your people created it on camera." That hit where it hurt: liability, budget, elections, careers. One of the command staff leaned close to Harmon and whispered something that made his eyes tighten again, likely the same ugly truth. Once this became public, it wouldn't stay local, it would scale. Marcus's phone buzzed. A message from his supervisor, counsel engaged, do not sign anything, document everything. Marcus looked at Harmon. My counsel is coming. Until then, nothing gets handled quietly. Harmon held Marcus's gaze and gave a stiff nod that wasn't agreement, it was surrender to the timeline. Out in the hallway, neighbors were no longer peeking. They were standing, watching, recording on their phones. The narrative had shifted from an officer's hunch to a department's crisis. And down on the street, the first news van didn't arrive yet, but the building already felt like it was being watched by the whole city. By early January 2026, the incident wasn't a rumor anymore. It was a case with timestamps, witnesses, and a sealed bodycam unit booked into evidence before anyone could review it privately. The department tried to keep it quiet for exactly one news cycle. They couldn't. A neighbor's hallway clip hit social media first, and the story spread fast. A black man detained at his own apartment door over nothing but wrapped boxes. City attorneys went straight into containment mode. Quick settlement, low number, no admission, sign and vanish. Marcus refused, not because he wanted attention, because he understood the pattern. When misconduct gets labeled a misunderstanding, it doesn't stop. It just gets repeated on someone else. The lawsuit hit like a hammer: unlawful detention, false arrest, illegal entry, illegal search and seizure, excessive force, and racial profiling. And then came the part the city hated most: discovery. Dispatch logs showed no call for service. No complaint, no bolo, just an officer choosing a target and building a story out loud for his own camera. That footage became the anchor. It didn't need commentary. It narrated itself: the invented probable cause, the shove in the hallway, the cuffs, the forced entry, the frantic tearing into packages that held nothing but iron and rubber. And then the moment the FBI badge appeared and the officer's confidence collapsed into panic. And that's where the $3.2 million comes in clearly, on paper. Marcus's legal team filed damages at $3.2 million as the civil rights price tag of what happened. The unlawful detention, the illegal entry, the search, the force, the humiliation, and the long-tail impact. The city isn't giving him that today, but they're staring at it as the number they may have to answer for if this goes the distance. The case didn't end in January. It escalated into a court timeline with real consequences. The next major inflection point is already set: May 12, 2026, a high-stakes hearing where the city is expected to fight to cap damages and limit precedent, while Marcus's side pushes to keep the exposure fully on the table. In other words, the battle is now about accountability and how expensive this is going to become. Klein's career was already over operationally. He was pulled off the street and terminated before the department could polish the optics. And the criminal exposure didn't disappear either. Deprivation of rights under color of law sits in a different category than policy violations, especially when the record is clean and the camera was secured. The city rushed out reforms early: mandatory bias training, revised entry and search rules, supervisor review triggers for detentions without calls for service, because leadership could read the room. Those changes don't erase what happened, they're damage control before May. Marcus replaced the scuffed floorboard, set up his home gym like he planned, and stayed in the same unit. He didn't move, he didn't hide. He kept walking that hallway like it belonged to him because it did. And now the story isn't cop followed his instincts. It's a department watching the calendar, knowing that on May 12, 2026, they'll have to explain on record why this happened at all. If you want the follow-up when that hearing hits, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next upload, because this isn't closed yet. And drop a comment. What city are you watching from, and do you think $3.2 million is fair, or should it be more?